Hey guys, so I know the lighting is terrible and there's a windstorm going on outside, and I was just thinking about some things, and I decided to jump on my phone and film a real quick, well, we'll see how quick it is, video explaining why I tell people that The Walking Dead saved my life. And um, people usually either look at me like I'm crazy or they laugh at me pretty incessantly when I say it. And some people just laugh and walk away or whatever, and other people actually want to hear the story. Explain. Um, the summer of 2010, I was working in a large international retail chain as a coordinator, which is part of the management team, but not a manager. Prior to that, I had been a manager, well, an assistant manager at other places. And one of the companies that I'd worked for 4 years as an assistant manager, I kind of saw the writing on the wall that it was going under. And I turned out to be right. It went under about a year after I left. And it was one of those I saw the writing on the wall, so I started looking elsewhere because I didn't want to be without a job for any length of time. So I went to this larger international retail chain, like I said, as a coordinator. And then I was there for about a year and a half, and I got promoted to merchandising manager of a separate location, about a half an hour ish from home. And I was so excited. I started working in this place in July of 2010, and it started out great. My first week was fantastic. Like, my staff was great, the store was great. I felt welcomed and very comfortable right away. And it was just, it felt like it was going to be a good experience. While I was training for this position at my former location, my original location, they had also just hired the store manager for the location I was going to. So we were actually training almost together. And he seemed really nice, and we seemed to get along, and it felt like it was going to be a good experience. And so I had no reservations whatsoever. Like, I was so excited to be promoted. I had this instant goal in my head. I was going to be a store manager within 2 years. I was only 31 at the time, but I had every intention of retiring from this company way later down the line. And I had goals and plans and dreams. My kids were, you know, older, so I could focus a lot of my attention on work, as opposed to prior to that, a lot of my attention, of course, went to my children. But I was able to really focus more on work while still having a great family life, a great relationship with my children, an excellent relationship with my husband. I mean, I was able to balance everything pretty well. And a week in 2010, so July of 2010, a week into this job, it became very apparent very quickly that this was actually going to be a very toxic environment. The manager that had been promoted around the same time I had ended up being kind of a nightmare. He was former Marine, and he kind of treated everybody like it was boot camp, which, if you've ever worked in a retail establishment, you know that a boot camp mentality is not going to work with your staff or your customers. I mean, it's toxic. It doesn't work. And I kind of fluffed it off as at first as, well, he's new to being a store manager. He's nervous. He's falling back on what he knows, which is being a drill instructor, essentially. And I kind of tried to let it go and wait to see how it evolved. And it kept getting worse. So October of 2010 rolls around, and I have a meeting with my district manager, and I explain to her that this is not working. I've tried for 3 months to make it work, and this person is making my life hell. He's trying to force me to come in on my days off, which I already have expressed to him on several occasions that I have stuff that I do with my family on my days off. I have a life outside of this job. I mean, I love this job. This is my career. I fully intend on making it my career and keeping it my career, but I do have a life outside of this, and I can't keep living in this emotional roller coaster that this store has become. And she said all the right things, and she said, hey, if you can stick it out through the holidays, which also, if you've worked retail, you know that the holidays are the worst time of year. It's the busiest. There's always stuff going on. There's extended hours for basically all retail stores. It's insanity. So she basically was like, if you can stick it out through the holidays, if you can stick it out through inventory, which is usually like the second week of January, then we can revisit this and we'll figure something out. I think there was conversation between me and our loss prevention manager at the time, who said that what they might be able to do, because I had expressed it to him as well, that what they might be able to do is just basically swap me and another ASM from a different store. Just swap us. Because sometimes there's just, bad bits, blah, blah, blah. So, and I loved my LP manager, I would like to point out. He was amazing, and he was very supportive through this whole thing, but he only had so much control. It's really up to the district manager. And during this time, I'm so frustrated because I'm like, I'm never going to get out of here. I'm never going to be able to get away from this guy. And I don't want to quit my job. I love my job. And I was so frustrated, and I was getting sick all the time. If there was a cold or a flu to be caught, I was catching it. If there was a stomach bug going around, I got it. If there was, just literally I was getting sick all the time. And then suddenly I started having some pretty severe symptoms of, I don't want to get into graphic detail, but there was some stuff going on that made me think that there was something more serious happening inside my body. And I expressed that to my DM, and I said, look, I'm getting really sick, and I know it's the stress that's doing it. I'm gonna stick it out through the holidays, but this is crazy. I can't keep doing this beyond that. And she said, I understand. We'll make it work. Lo and behold, October 31st of 2010, a little show called The Walking Dead premieres on AMC. And let me tell you that I was instantaneously hooked. There was something so compelling, especially about that first episode, where this guy, Rick, wakes up out of a coma that we have no idea how long he's been in a coma at this point. We know he has been in one, but we don't know for how long. And he wakes up out of this coma into a world that is just complete chaos. And he doesn't understand what's happening. And he doesn't understand what's happened to him. And he's just thrown into this chaotic situation and has to figure out a way to survive it and make the best out of it. To say I saw parallels between myself and Rick in that moment would be an understatement. And as the season went on, that first season, which was unfortunately only 6 episodes, but they were probably the best 6 episodes of TV that I've ever seen, I related so much to the human side of the story. I mean, a lot of people who don't watch the show or who have only seen a few episodes here and there are like, oh, well, it's a zombie show. And you're like, no, honey. It's a human show. It's about strength and love and sacrifice and being stronger than what life is throwing at you. in my heart and head, that's what the show is about. And that's what it remains about to this day, which, by the way, I'm filming this the day before Saturday, the 21st of October. The season 8 premieres tomorrow night. I'm very excited. I feel very empty when I don't have The Walking Dead in my life. So anyway, I made it through by the seat of my pants and watching the first season of The Walking Dead over and over and over again, because it gave me strength in this weird way. Like, this TV show kind of crawled into my soul and helped give me strength to deal with this horrendous life situation that I had found myself in. So January rolls around and we've gone through the holidays, which were horrible. I can't adequately express how horrible they were. We get through inventory and then I get super sick. I ended up having to take a week off of work. I had a bunch of medical tests ran, some very invasive tests. And I was very, very scared because there was so much happening, like, so suddenly. And the stress of the work situation was making it worse and worse. Hold on a sec. Gotta have my coffee. I am a coffee junkie. So, please forgive how I look. I have no makeup on. My skin's acting up. But I wanted to get this story on video because, you know, if I ever say that flippantly, like The Walking Dead saved my life, I can just be like, here, and push play, and they'll get it. So, I go through all these medical tests. I'm having all these horrendous health things happening. And my mother-in-law, who is awesome, was a regional nurse for a assisted living chain of assisted living facilities that dealt specifically with memory care, so Alzheimer's, dementia. And she goes, look, this job's going to kill you. Like, you have so much going on now health-wise. And it's obviously all due to stress. This job is going to kill you. You have to I can get you a job. Like, and I will get you a job that's literally right down the street from your house. And she did. Like, so I became a caregiver at a memory care facility. I put in my notice at the other job, and let me tell you, that was heartbreaking. I had committed my life to that job. I had weathered many a storm for that job. I was brokenhearted to leave it. Like, I still get emotional about it because that was going to be my career. Like, I was really excited when I got that opportunity, and to have it go the way it went was very devastating. And I didn't want to leave, but I knew if I was going to even attempt to maintain my health, I had to. So I did. And I thought all of that was behind me when I took this new position. And honestly, I loved being a caregiver. It was such a rewarding. I'd never had a job that had felt so rewarding before, like where you felt like you were really making a difference in someone's life. Especially when someone goes to a memory care facility, they're not there to get better. So it's basically end of life care, essentially. Some residents were healthier than others, of course, like physically healthier than others, but others were not good. And we lost some people on my shifts. And the first couple were really hard, but I hate to say this, but after a while you kind of get used to it. But anyway, I'm digressing. So that was like the best 3 months I'd had in a very long time. So June 6th of 2011, I started having these very strange pains that reminded me of the many, many times I've had a kidney infection. So I've had several. So it was like, okay, I've got a kidney infection. I'll go to the doctor. I'll get antibiotics. I'll be fine. So I did that. I was June 6th, yeah. So I ended up going to the doctor, and by that next day, so June 7th, I went to urgent care. And by then the pain was so bad that I was doubled over in tears. Like, the doctor was like, "Oh yeah, you have a history of kidney infections. You've got a kidney infection. Here's antibiotics. Go home. Take a couple days off." So I got like a note from him saying to take a couple days off from work and to let the antibiotics do their thing, and I went home. But by that night, I'd taken 2 rounds of the antibiotics already, and in the past, when I'd had a kidney infection, I started feeling better, like, within 4 hours of my first dose of antibiotics. Because usually it'll take some of the swelling down, because it's killing off, you know what I mean. So I was feeling worse, way worse. So I told my husband, I'm like, this is awful. Like, I feel like I'm dying. Like, the pain was spreading across my back. It was spreading around to the front in my pelvis. Like, it was a nightmare. And so he's like, well, you know what? Let's go to the ER. And I'm like, I don't want to. And he's like, this pain is insane. I was doubled over, like, screaming and sobbing. So we go to the emergency room, and it turns out that I have a blocked ureter in my left kidney, and my left kidney is like 4 times its normal size because it's not draining. It's so swollen. So I ended up in the hospital for like a day and a half. They drained the kidney, and then they put a stent in to keep it open so that it would drain, which, by the way, if you've ever had a stent in your kidney, I'm so sorry. It's painful and like the most uncomfortable thing ever, but it's better than the swollen up kidney. So I had that, and I was like, okay, well, obviously I can't work with a stent in my kidney because the other side effect of having a stent in your kidney is that you have basically no bladder control. So I had to take some time off of work. And then the doctor was like, well, we'll leave the stent in and we'll check on it. And it turned out, after I had like a CT scan or something, that it was, there was like a kink or something that he had to go in and surgically repair. But he wanted to make sure it was all drained off and that because it had infected. So he wanted to make sure the infection was gone before he did the surgery. So we scheduled the surgery for July. I got the stent out the beginning of the last week of July, and I was able to actually go back to work for about a week. I worked up until the day before surgery, which I think was the 27th of July. I had the surgery. It went textbook. Everything was fine. There was a stent in there for a while. It healed. And then he said, okay, we're going to get the stent out, and you'll get the stent out probably in August. And because I had to leave that in for like 6 to 8 weeks, I think it was. You'll get the stent out late August, beginning of September, and you should be able to go back to work by the middle of September, and your life should go back to normal. And I'm like, all right, cool. Yay. So I got the stent out. I think it was the end of August. And it was actually a little complicated, but I don't need to get into that. But anyways, we got the stent out. Everything was going fine. Recovery was going great. My birthday was on September 13th, and we went up to my mother-in-law's for dinner because my father-in-law was a chef at the time, and he made amazing food. He still makes amazing food. But anyway, so we go up there for dinner, and I wasn't feeling right. I was kind of achy all over, like I was coming down with something maybe. But I also had this really nagging, pulled muscle tugging sensation in my left thigh, like the inside of my left thigh. Now, I've had pulled muscles before. I hadn't done anything that would have made me think that I pulled a muscle, but you never know. I mean, as everyone knows, sometimes something as simple as standing up from the couch can cause a pulled muscle. So I just assumed, okay, maybe I pulled a muscle. So I thought nothing of it, really. But the next day, it just progressively got worse and worse and worse. And I then developed like a low-grade fever. And my husband was at work at that point, and I called him and I told him, and he's like, you need to call your urologist. I know we're like a couple months out from, or a little less than a couple months out from surgery, but you could have an infection. Maybe the kidney's blocking again and it's just manifesting weird. It could be nothing, but call him up. So I call him up, and he says, I'm not that overly worried about it, but let's go to the ER and have it checked out. Okay. So I call my husband back, and he says, okay, let me get someone to come in and cover for me, and I'll come pick you up, and we'll go to the ER. And I'm like, fine. I didn't want to. I really, really didn't want to, but we did. And we were there for a good couple of hours. And now, bear in mind, by this point, it is probably midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning on the 15th. Yeah, of September. I'm supposed to go back to work on Friday the 17th. So I'm going, please let me be able to go back to work. Please let this be no big deal. It's probably nothing, blah, blah, blah. Now, they were about 30 seconds from sending me home because they weren't able to find anything. But one of my urologists happened to be in the ER that night, saw my name on the board, and asked what was going on. And they said, okay, let's do a quickie CT scan. Just a quick one, just to make sure that the kidney's okay, and so we did. And about an hour after the CT scan, the ER doctor comes in and sits down, which is always a bad sign. And he says, I have good news and I have bad news. Which one do you want first? And I said, I guess the good news. And he goes, your kidney's fine. And I said, oh, great. Can I go home? And he goes, well, that's the bad news. We have to admit you because we found a blood clot in your pelvis. My head exploded. I was like, what? A blood clot? What? And he's like, yeah, they can be pretty serious, so we need to admit you and get you on a heparin drip and then get you to a therapeutic level before we can send you home. So I was there for 2 days. Obviously, I didn't go back to work. And the reality is, I never went back to work after that. In any capacity, except for a failed attempt at trying to sell Avon from home. So I was there for 2 days. They got me to a therapeutic heparin level. They sent me home with Lovenox injections and Coumadin. This will break up the clot. You'll be fine. Okay. So October 3rd, I had an ultrasound follow-up to check out. Oh, I'd had a couple procedures to try to remove the clot too, by the way. Didn't work. So I go home. I'm on my pills and my injections. Things seem like they're going fine. My INR, that's your Coumadin level in your blood that's keeping your blood thin, was great. So, pretty consistent. So I was at a therapeutic level. Things were looking up. I was having no more pain, no more pulled muscle sensation, no more swelling. Like things were, I thought, okay, cool. We're on the home stretch. Wrong. October 3rd, I have the ultrasound. And after being there for about 2 hours and knowing something's wrong, because it was very obvious that the ultrasound tech was wanting to be able to tell me something but couldn't. And she's like, okay, after like an hour of waiting after the ultrasound was over, she comes out, the ultrasound tech comes out and goes, okay, you can go ahead and go home. Your doctor's going to call you. And I was like, what's going on? She's like, I can't tell you, blah, blah, blah. At this point, my head's exploding. I've had enough. I'm done. I'm so angry. My body is doing fucked up things and I'm just angry. And I tell my husband, I'm like, okay, fine. Dr. Penner's going to be calling. That was my surgeon. And I said, he's going to be calling. I need to get out of here. Let's go to the coast or something, get some clam chowder, whatever. I just need the drive. Even if we just drive there and back, I need the calm. And he was like, okay, and I'm like, but let's go get coffee first. Cause I hadn't had any coffee yet that day. And by now it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Not even, it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And he's like, all right, so we jump in the car, we head downtown, which is literally maybe 10 minutes from the hospital, to go to Starbucks to get coffee before we drive to the coast. And right after we pull in, hadn't even ordered the Starbucks yet, we pull in and my surgeon calls, and it's not the receptionist, it's my surgeon on the phone, which if anybody's had anything to do with the medical community, you know your doctor, your actual doctor doesn't normally call. It's usually like a receptionist or the physician's assistant or, it's normally not him. And he's on the phone and he says, there was a miscommunication. I did not want you to leave the hospital. You need to be admitted immediately. And I said, what in the hell is going on? And he's like, the clot grew. It had grown from like a little 2-inch clot in my pelvis to a 2-foot clot that completely occluded the vein from belly button to the back of my left knee, meaning no blood was getting through. And I was like, seriously? He's like, you need to come back to the hospital. And I said, can I go home and pack a bag at least? And he's like, all right, you can go home and pack a bag. That's fine. So we leave. We don't even get the coffee. We leave to go home to go pack a bag. I am hysterical and angry at this point. And I get a call from the hospital who's like, we're not going to have a room ready till like 4:30, so don't bother being here until like 4:15. I said, great. I can go home. I can eat something. I can hang out with my dogs and my kids, and then I can pack a bag, and then we can go. So that's what we did. 8 days in ICU. Almost died. Got released from the hospital on, I can't remember if it was the 12th or the 13th of October. I think it was the 12th. And luckily, I think it was that Sunday, or maybe the Sunday after, but whatever it was, Season 2 of The Walking Dead premiered. At this point, I'm laying on my couch, unable to move because my left leg is 3 times its normal size. There is literally a drain tube coming out of my thigh. I've got stitches in my thigh. I have all kinds of things happen. I'm swelled up like a balloon. And I am in so much pain that I want to rip my leg off. And I'm just so frustrated with life at this point. And then there's The Walking Dead. Back. And there's Rick. Against all odds. And Carl gets shot and survives. Against all odds. And they find the farm and a sort of safe place to be. Against all odds. And, Daryl was determined to find Sophia after she went. I mean, there was so much hope in that season. I know a lot of people are like, that's the worst season of it. But there was so much drive and determination and hope in that season that I felt like that's exactly the season I needed at that time. And I'm like, if Carl can survive that gunshot wound to the chest, I can survive in the zombie apocalypse. I can survive a blood clot in my leg with all of the medical intervention that is, available to me. And if Lori can be pregnant, in this world, there's still hope. And if the farm, this beautiful farm is still standing in the middle of this apocalyptic wasteland that the world has turned into, and there's still a family there with love and hope and compassion for other people, there's hope. That season to me was about hope. And I needed hope. So I got it, and I watched every Sunday, except of course during the mid-season break for the holidays. But that show just gives me this overwhelming feeling of determination and hope to survive whatever it is that life throws my way. And it always seems to have the right season and the right story at the right time. I am having some more weird, disturbing symptoms that are popping up recently. And what's coming back? The Walking Dead. And what are they doing? All out war against Negan. And what does that mean? Hope and determination, baby. To defeat a force that seems so strong and powerful. To overcome this adversary that in their case is Negan and in my case is my own stupid body. I just feel so connected to that show and the characters and the story of that show, and the faith and determination and hope and love and humanity that is a constant on the show makes me feel like I have hope in my own life. And so when I say The Walking Dead saved my life, that's what I mean. There were times over this last 6 years where I felt very alone, to the point sometimes of being suicidal. Thinking that my family would be better off without me, the world would be better off without me, that I would finally have some peace if I just wasn't here. And that show reminds me that finding the strength to survive is vastly braver and more meaningful than giving up. Because if there's one thing you can say about Rick Grimes and about Daryl Dixon and any of them for that matter, but Rick is really the one I relate to because he was the first person I saw on the show, you know, like everybody else did. But if Rick Grimes is going to keep fighting and isn't going to give up, then neither am I. So that's what I mean. And I know I've been on here for like